The first crack in the porcelain perfection of my life appeared on a Tuesday afternoon, and it didn't come with a bang, but with the soft, metallic clink of a loose ventilation grate. I was in the attic, a space we rarely used. It was supposed to be strictly for HVAC maintenance, a narrow, dusty crawl space that ran the length of our master bedroom. Marcus had always been adamant about me staying out of there. "It's unsafe, Elle," he'd say with that disarming, lopsided smile that made my knees weak even after 5 years. "Exposed wiring, insulation fibers, just let the contractors handle it." I had listened. I always listened to Marcus. He was the sensible one, the rock, the man who managed our portfolios and planned our vacations and reminded me to take my iron supplements. But today, the scratching sound had been driving me insane. It sounded like a rat, or something larger, scuttling back and forth directly above where I slept. Marcus was at the firm. He had a merger closing, a war room day, he'd called it, so I grabbed the stepladder and a flashlight. I pushed open the hatch. The air up there was stagnant, smelling of dry wood and old heat. I crawled forward on my hands and knees, the flashlight beam cutting through the gloom. There was no rat. The scratching had likely been a tree branch scraping the roof shingles. I was about to turn back when the beam of my light caught the reflection of something that shouldn't have been there. Wedged behind the main furnace duct, pushed far back into the shadows where a casual glance wouldn't catch it, was a black, waterproof Pelican case. I froze. Marcus was a minimalist. We didn't store things. We digitized documents. We donated old clothes. We didn't have junk. I reached out, my fingers brushing the cold, hard plastic. It was heavy. I dragged it toward me, the scraping sound echoing loudly in the silence of the house. I sat back on my heels and stared at it. It wasn't locked. My heart began a slow, heavy thudding against my ribs. A rational wife would think, it's old paperwork, it's a surprise gift, it's tools. But I wasn't feeling rational. I was feeling a cold, primitive prickle on the back of my neck that whispered, "Don't open it." I flipped the latches. Snap, snap. I lifted the lid. Inside, nestled in custom-cut foam, were items that made no sense together. There were 3 thick bundles of cash, $100 bills wrapped in bank bands. I did a quick visual calculation. It had to be at least $50,000. Next to the cash was a silver USB drive, and next to that was a passport. My hands were trembling so badly I almost dropped the flashlight. I picked up the passport. It was a dark blue American passport, brand new. I flipped it open, expecting to see Marcus's face. I did. It was him. The same sharp jawline, the same intense blue eyes, the same slight scar above his left eyebrow. But the name didn't say Marcus Sterling. It said Julian Vane. I stared at the name, my brain refusing to process the letters. Julian Vane. Who was Julian Vane? I flipped to the birth date. It was the same. I flipped to the place of birth. Marcus was born in Chicago. The passport said Tallahassee, Florida. I dropped the passport back into the case as if it had burned me. I looked at the cash again. Why would my husband, a senior partner at a boutique investment bank who made 7 figures a year, need a stash of cash and a fake passport in the attic? Paranoid, I whispered to myself. Maybe it's a joke, a gag gift? But the passport felt real. The cash smelled like money, that distinct blend of linen and ink. Then I saw the gun. It was tucked under the foam layer, barely visible, a compact black handgun. I didn't know anything about guns, but I knew Marcus hated them. He was a pacifist. He wouldn't even let me buy a pepper spray keychain when I started jogging at night. "Violence invites violence, Elena," he told me, holding my hands in his. I sat there in the dust, hyperventilating. The walls of the attic seemed to be closing in. I checked the time on my watch, 2:15 p.m. Marcus usually came home around 7. I had to put it back. I had to pretend I never saw it. I couldn't confront him, not yet. I didn't know who Julian Vane was, but a man with a fake identity and a gun wasn't someone you confronted while you were alone in a secluded house in the hills. I arranged everything exactly as I had found it. I wiped the latches with the sleeve of my sweater to remove fingerprints, feeling ridiculous and terrified at the same time. I shoved the case back behind the duct, ensuring the dust looked undisturbed. I climbed down, closed the hatch, and put the ladder away. My hands were shaking so hard I couldn't clasp the storage closet door properly. I went into the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water. I stared out the floor-to-ceiling windows at the gray, misty forest that surrounded our property. The house, usually my sanctuary, suddenly felt like a cage. The glass walls meant I could see out, but they also meant anyone could see in. I needed information. I went to Marcus's home office. It was a pristine space. Glass desk, Eames chair, nothing out of place. I sat at his computer. It was password protected, of course. I knew the password. Gallery 2019, the year he funded the opening of my art gallery. I typed it in. Incorrect password. I frowned. He must have changed it. I tried his birthday. Incorrect. I tried the name of our dog who passed away last year. Incorrect. Okay, I muttered, sweat prickling my hairline. Okay. I went to the filing cabinet. Locked. I went to our shared safe in the closet. I spun the dial to our anniversary combination. It clicked open. Inside were our marriage license, the deed to the house, and my jewelry. I pulled out the deed. I just wanted to see our names together, to ground myself in reality. I unfolded the heavy paper. Deed of trust. Grantee, Apex Holdings, LLC. I blinked. My name wasn't on it. Marcus's name wasn't on it. Just Apex Holdings, LLC. What is going on? I whispered. Marcus had told me explicitly that he put the house in both our names. He had made a toast to it, to our forever home owned by the Sterlings. I grabbed my phone and dialed the number for our bank's private wealth line. I needed to hear a balance. I needed to know that at least the money was real, that we weren't in some sort of debt trouble that would explain the cash stash. "Welcome to First Republic," the automated voice said. "Please enter your account number." I entered it from memory. "I'm sorry, that account number is not recognized." My stomach dropped to the floor. I tried again. Maybe I mistyped. "I'm sorry, that account number is not recognized." I hung up, my breathing coming in shallow gasps. I logged into the mobile app. My Face ID worked. The app opened. Checking account, $4,203.00. Savings account, $150. $4,000. That was it. Where was the investment account, the joint savings, the emergency fund that had over $200,000 in it last month? They weren't there, just vanished. No transfer history. It was as if those accounts had never been linked to my profile. I heard the sound of gravel crunching in the driveway. My head snapped up. It was 3:30 p.m. Marcus never came home this early. Never. I scrambled to my feet. I had to look normal. I had to be Elena, the happy wife, the artist, the woman who didn't know her husband was a ghost named Julian. I ran to the living room and grabbed a magazine, throwing myself onto the sofa. I forced my breathing to slow. In, out, in, out. The front door opened. The heavy, expensive thud of the solid wood closing echoed through the foyer. "Elle?" His voice was cheerful, smooth, normal. "In here," I called out. My voice sounded thin, brittle. I cleared my throat. "In the living room." Marcus walked in. He looked impeccable in his charcoal suit, his tie loosened just enough to look roguishly tired. He was carrying a bouquet of white lilies, my favorite. "Surprise," he grinned, walking over to kiss me. I let him. I let his lips touch mine. His mouth was warm. He smelled of sandalwood and expensive coffee. I wanted to vomit. "You're home early," I said, pulling back and trying to smile. I felt like the skin of my face was made of plaster. "Client canceled last minute," he said, handing me the flowers. "And I realized I haven't seen enough of my beautiful wife lately. I thought I'd take you out for an early dinner. That seafood place on the pier." He looked at me. His eyes, usually so warm, felt like scanners, analyzing my microexpressions. "You look pale," he said, his smile faltering slightly. "Are you feeling okay?" "Just a headache," I lied. "The weather." He reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers grazed my temple. "You need to take better care of yourself, Elle. You know how you get when you're stressed. You start imagining things." My blood ran cold. "You start imagining things." "I'm fine," I said, a little too sharply. He pulled his hand back, his expression shifting to one of mild hurt. "Okay, sorry. Just worrying about you." He unbuttoned his jacket. "I'm going to go up and change. Pour us a drink?" "Sure," I said. He turned and headed for the stairs. I watched him go. He walked with a confident, athletic stride. He was going upstairs, to the bedroom, where the attic hatch was. Did I close it all the way? Did I wipe the fingerprints off the latch perfectly? I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly, and moved to the kitchen to get the wine. I heard his footsteps overhead. Thump, thump, thump. Then silence. He had stopped walking. He was standing directly under the hatch. I gripped the neck of the wine bottle so hard my knuckles turned white. Had he heard me earlier? Did he have sensors? Was there a camera in the attic I hadn't seen? "Elena?" His voice came from the top of the stairs. It wasn't cheerful anymore. It was flat, cold. "Yes," I called back, freezing. "Did you have the cleaners come today?" "No," I said. "Why?" "Nothing," he said. "Just something looks moved." He didn't say what. He didn't come back down. I heard him walk into the closet. I heard the beep of the safe. He was checking. He was checking his perimeter. I poured the wine, spilling a splash of red onto the white marble counter. It looked like blood. I wiped it up frantically with a paper towel. I had to get out. I couldn't go to dinner with him. I couldn't sit across from him and pretend I didn't know he had wiped our accounts and bought a gun. But if I tried to leave now, he would know. He would know I knew. He came back downstairs 5 minutes later. He had changed into jeans and cashmere sweater, the casual, wealthy husband costume. He looked relaxed, but as he took the wine glass from my hand, I noticed something. His hand was steady, perfectly steady, but his eyes were dilated. "To us," he said, raising the glass. "To us," I whispered. I took a sip. "Oh, by the way," he said casually, taking a seat on the bar stool opposite me, "I got a notification that someone tried to access the investment accounts today. Strange, right?" He stared at the vase, hiding the gun on the table. "That is strange," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "Maybe a glitch?" "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe someone hacked the password. I changed everything just now for security. You'll need the new codes if you want to buy anything." He smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was a warning. "I locked everything down, Elena, just to be safe." He knew. He absolutely knew. He was cutting off my resources. I was trapped in a glass house with a stranger named Julian, with $4,000 to my name and nowhere to go. "Shall we go?" he asked, standing up. "I'm starving." I looked at the knife block on the counter behind him, the heavy chef's knife. "Let me just grab my coat," I said. I walked to the hallway closet. My purse was there, my car keys. I grabbed them. "I'll meet you in the car," I called out. I'm driving, he said, stepping into the hallway, blocking my path to the front door. He held up his keys, dangling them. You've got a headache, remember? You shouldn't be behind the wheel. He opened the front door and gestured for me to exit first. After you, darling. I stepped out into the mist. The cold air hit my face, but it didn't wake me up. It felt like I was walking into a nightmare. As I walked toward his black SUV, I realized with terrifying clarity, I wasn't just broke. I wasn't just lied to. I was being erased. The interior of Marcus's Audi was a hermetically sealed capsule of leather and silence. As I buckled my seatbelt, I heard the distinct, heavy thunk of the central locking system engaging. It wasn't the automatic lock that engages when you drive. It was the manual override. He had pressed the button on his door panel before the engine even turned over. The rain had thickened, drumming a relentless, erratic rhythm against the panoramic sunroof. Marcus drove with his usual terrifying precision, hands at 10 and 2, eyes scanning the mirrors, speed limit strictly observed. He turned on the stereo. Classical. Chopin's Nocturnes. Melancholic, slow, and suffocating. You're quiet, he said, his voice barely rising above the piano notes. I told you, my head hurts, I murmured, pressing my forehead against the cold glass of the passenger window. I watched the trees blur past, dark, skeletal shapes in the headlights. We were descending the winding hills toward the city, but every mile felt like we were driving further away from safety. I was thinking, Marcus said, his tone conversational, as if discussing the weather, about what you said earlier, the account alert. My breath hitched. What about it? It's a reminder of how vulnerable we are. Digital footprints, identity theft. It's a chaotic world, Elle. Sometimes I think we should just disconnect. Start fresh somewhere else. Somewhere warm. Maybe South America. He glanced at me. The dashboard lights cast hollow shadows under his eyes. South America? I forced a laugh. Marcus, my gallery is here. Your firm is here. We can't just leave. Can't we? He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel. Assets are liquid. Properties can be sold. People reinvent themselves every day. It's actually quite easy if you have the discipline for it. Julian Vane, the name screamed in my head. I like our life here, I said, my voice trembling. Do you? He signaled a turn, the blinker sounding like a metronome counting down time. Or do you like the idea of the life we have? The routine, the safety. Sometimes, Elena, safety is just an illusion we buy to sleep at night. We arrived at the restaurant, the Grotto. It was an upscale, cavernous place built into the side of a cliff, famous for its privacy and its seafood. The valet opened my door. The cool air hit me, and for a second I considered running, just sprinting down the wet pavement into the traffic. But Marcus was there instantly, his hand gripping my elbow. It looked like a supportive gesture to an observer, a loving husband steadying his wife in heels, but his grip was bruising. His fingers dug into the sensitive nerves of my arm, a silent command to behave. Careful, darling, he whispered near my ear. Slippery. He guided me inside. The maitre d', a man named Henri, who had known us for years, beamed. Mr. and Mrs. Sterling, wonderful to see you. We have your usual booth. Thank you, Henri, Marcus said, shaking his hand. Actually, could we get something a bit more secluded? Elena isn't feeling well tonight. The noise might bother her. Of course, right this way. Henri led us to a table in the back corner, shielded by heavy velvet curtains and a large aquarium tank. We were practically invisible to the rest of the dining room. Marcus sat with his back to the wall, facing the entrance, a habit I had always thought was just a quirk, but now realized was a tactical necessity. I'll order for us, Marcus told the waiter before I even opened the menu. The Chilean sea bass for the lady, and bring us a bottle of the 14 Pinot Noir, and take these away. He gestured to the extra place settings. Once the waiter left, Marcus leaned forward, clasping his hands on the tablecloth. He stared at me. Give me your phone, Elle. I froze. What? Your phone. You've been checking it constantly. The blue light is bad for your migraine, and if we're going to reconnect, we need no distractions. He held out his hand, palm up, expectant. I need it for work, I stammered. One of my artists is having a crisis. The gallery is closed, he said softly. Give me the phone. It wasn't a request. The intensity in his eyes was terrifying. It was a blank, shark-like focus. I reached into my purse and pulled out my iPhone. I handed it to him. He didn't put it in his pocket. He dropped it in the ice bucket containing the water carafe. Marcus, I gasped. Oops, he said, his face completely expressionless. My hand slipped. I stared at the phone, bubbling at the bottom of the ice water. My lifeline, my connection to the bank, the police, my sister. Gone. Why are you doing this? I whispered, tears prickling my eyes. Doing what? Trying to have a nice dinner with my wife? He picked up his napkin and unfolded it. You're being hysterical, Elena. This is exactly what Dr. Aris was worried about. Dr. Aris was my therapist. Marcus paid for the sessions. You talked to Dr. Aris? Of course. I called him this afternoon, after I got the alert about the bank accounts. I told you were spiraling again, that you were paranoid about finances. He agreed that we should increase your dosage. Gaslighting. He was building a narrative. If I went to the police now, I was the crazy wife off her meds. He was the concerned, wealthy husband trying to help. I need to use the restroom, I said, standing up abruptly. Sit down, he said. I need to pee, Marcus, unless you want me to do it right here. He studied me for a second, then nodded slowly. Make it quick. Food is coming. I walked toward the restrooms, feeling his eyes burning a hole between my shoulder blades. As soon as I turned the corner and was out of his line of sight, I broke into a jog. I burst into the ladies' room. It was empty, thank God. I went to the sink and gripped the porcelain, staring at my reflection. I looked terrified. My skin was ashen, my eyes wide and wild. I looked exactly like the unstable woman he was painting me to be. The door opened. A woman walked in. She was older, wearing a heavy fur coat and diamonds. She looked at me, startled by my heavy breathing. "Are you all right, dear?" she asked. "Please," I whispered, rushing toward her. "Please, can I borrow your phone? It's an emergency. My husband, I think I'm in danger." The woman recoiled, clutching her purse tighter. Her eyes darted to the door. "Oh," she said, her voice dropping to a sympathetic coo. "You must be Mrs. Sterling." I froze. "How do you know my name?" "Your husband," she said gently. "I met him near the coat check just now. He told me you might be in here. He said you were having an episode. He asked us to be patient with you." My blood turned to ice. He hadn't stayed at the table. He had intercepted people. He was charming the witnesses before I could even speak. "He's lying," I hissed. "He's not who he says he is. Please, just let me make a call." The woman backed away toward the door, looking frightened, not from me, but of me. "I think you should go back to your table, honey. He seems very worried about you." She slipped out the door before I could stop her. I was trapped. If I made a scene, if I screamed, Marcus would play the hero. He would soothe me, apologize to the crowd, and drag me out. And then, what? I washed my face with cold water. I had to play the long game. I had to survive the night. I walked back to the table. Marcus was cutting his steak. My sea bass was cooling on the plate. "Better?" he asked, not looking up. "Much," I said, sliding into the booth. "Good. Eat. You need your strength." We ate in silence. I forced down mouthfuls of fish that tasted like ash. I drank the wine he poured, hoping it would calm the tremors in my hands, but fearing what he might have put in it. "I made a decision," he said, wiping his mouth. "We're leaving tonight." My fork clattered onto the plate. "Tonight? Marcus, that's insane." "Not insane. Necessary." He looked up, and for the first time, the mask slipped completely. The charm vanished. The Marcus I knew, the gentle, slightly nerdy banker, was gone. In his place was a cold, calculating stranger, Julian. "I know you went into the attic, Elena," he said quietly. The air left my lungs. "I know you opened the case. I put a hair across the latch. A simple trick, but effective. And I checked the logs on my computer. You tried to log in, and you checked the bank accounts." He took a sip of wine, his eyes locking onto mine. "I'm disappointed. I thought we had more trust than that." "Trust?" I choked out. "You have a fake passport. You have a gun. You emptied our accounts. Who are you?" "He am the man who has given you a perfect life for 5 years," he hissed, leaning across the table. "I bought you that gallery. I bought you that house. I bought you this life. And I did it with money that I earned. Maybe not legally by your standards, but I earned it." "You stole it," I whispered. "I reallocated it," he corrected, "from people who have too much to people who have nothing, like us. I was going to tell you, eventually, when we were safe in the Caymans, but you had to go snooping." He signaled for the check. "So here is the deal, Elena. You are going to walk out of here with me. You are going to smile. We are going to drive home, pack a bag for you, and we are going to drive to a private airfield. If you scream, if you run, if you signal anyone, I will kill Henri. Then I will kill that nice old lady you terrified in the bathroom, and then I will kill you." He smiled. It was the smile of a predator looking at a wounded rabbit. "Do we have an understanding?" I looked at Henri, who was laughing with a couple near the door. I looked at the old woman. "Yes," I whispered. "Good girl." The drive back up the mountain was agonizing. The rain had turned into a torrent. The windshield wipers slashed back and forth like metronomes counting down the minutes of my life. Marcus drove with one hand on the wheel, the other resting casually on the center console, inches from my hand, but miles away in warmth. When we pulled into the driveway, the house looked different. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a fortress. The floor-to-ceiling windows were black voids reflecting the headlights. Marcus killed the engine. The silence of the forest rushed in. "Go inside," he commanded, "straight to the bedroom. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. He chuckled at his own joke. I walked to the front door, my legs heavy. He was right behind me, his presence a physical weight. Inside, the house was freezing. The heating must have turned off while we were gone. "Pack warm," he said, locking the deadbolt and sliding the heavy brass chain into place. "It's getting cold at high altitude." I walked up the stairs. I needed a weapon. I needed a plan. I entered the master bedroom. The attic hatch was directly above me. The case was up there. The gun was up there. But I couldn't reach it without the ladder, and the ladder was downstairs in the utility closet. Marcus came into the room behind me. He was holding a roll of gray duct tape and a bundle of plastic zip ties. "What are those for?" I asked, backing toward the bed. "For insurance," he said calmly. "I need to go down to the basement to sanitize the server. I can't have you running off into the woods while I'm working. It's for your own safety, Elle. You'd get lost out there." "No," I said, shaking my head. "No, Marcus, please." "Sit on the bed." "No!" I lunged for the bedside lamp, a heavy marble block. He moved faster than I thought possible. He caught my wrist mid-swing, twisting it painfully behind my back. I screamed as he slammed me face down on the mattress, his knee pressed into my spine, pinning me. "Don't make this ugly," he grunted, grabbing my other wrist. I heard the zip of the plastic tie tightening. He bound my hands behind my back. Then he grabbed my ankles and zipped them together. He rolled me over. I was crying, hyperventilating. Shh, he soothed, brushing the hair off my sweaty forehead. It's just for 20 minutes. Then we go. Think of it as an adventure. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, right? You always liked that movie. He ripped a piece of duct tape from the roll. I love you, Elena, he said, looking at me with a twisted kind of adoration. I really do. That's why I'm taking you with me instead of leaving you here to deal with the feds. He slapped the tape over my mouth. He stood up, adjusted his cuffs, and looked around the room. Be right back. Don't go anywhere. He turned off the light, plunging the room into darkness, and walked out, closing the door. I heard the lock click from the outside. I lay there in the dark, bound and gagged, listening to his footsteps recede down the stairs. I was alone, but as my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I saw something. The closet door was slightly ajar, and inside, on the floor where I had dropped my laundry earlier, was a shimmer of metal. My heavy-duty tailoring shears. I had been hemming a dress this morning and left them on the pile. They were 10 feet away. I was bound hand and foot, but I could roll. I began to thrash, inching my body toward the edge of the bed. I hit the floor with a heavy thud, pain shooting through my shoulder. I groaned against the tape, but I didn't stop. I began to drag myself across the rug, inch by inch, toward the closet. I had 20 minutes before Julian Vane came back to take me to a second location from which I would never return. I had to cut the ties, and then I had to get into the attic. The carpet burned my cheek as I dragged myself forward, the friction searing my skin, but the pain was a grounding force. It reminded me I was still alive. My shoulders screamed in protest, twisted unnaturally behind my back, but panic is a potent fuel. I kept my eyes locked on the glimmer of metal in the closet, the tailoring shears. They were my only chance. It took me 5 agonizing minutes to inch across the room. Every time my hip bone hit the floorboards, a jolt of pain shot up my spine. When I finally reached the pile of laundry, I rolled onto my back, gasping for air against the duct tape, my sweat stinging my eyes. I fished blindly with my bound hands, my fingers brushing against silk and denim until cold steel met my skin. I gripped the shears. They were heavy, professional-grade scissors I used for canvas and heavy fabrics. Maneuvering them was a nightmare. I had to wedge the handle between my feet, clamping them tight with my ankles, creating a stationary blade pointing upward. I sat up, my core muscles trembling, and sawed the plastic zip tie binding my wrists against the sharp edge. Snap. The release was instantaneous. My arms fell to my sides, blood rushing back into my hands with a painful tingling sensation. I ripped the tape off my mouth, suppressing a scream as it tore at my skin and fine hairs. I didn't waste time crying. I grabbed the shears and cut the tie around my ankles. I was free. I stood up, swaying slightly. The room was pitch black, save for the faint gray light of the storm filtering through the curtains. I checked the door. Locked. I pressed my ear against the wood. Silence from the hallway. Faint vibrations from the basement. He was still down there, erasing his digital life. I turned my eyes to the ceiling, the attic hatch. I didn't have the ladder, and the closet was empty of anything tall enough. I looked at the heavy oak dresser. It was too wide to move silently. I looked at the bedside tables. Too short. I grabbed the ottoman from the foot of the bed and dragged it to the center of the room, directly under the hatch. I stacked the nightstand on top of it. It was a precarious, wobbly tower. I climbed up. The nightstand groaned under my weight. I stretched my arm up, my fingers barely grazing the handle of the hatch. I stood on my tiptoes, the tower swaying beneath me, and pushed. The hatch gave way, swinging down. I caught it before it slammed, easing it lower. A cloud of dust rained down on my face, choking me, but I held my breath. I gripped the frame of the opening and hauled myself up, kicking the nightstand away as I scrambled into the crawlspace. It was freezing up there. The rain hammered on the roof, inches above my head, like a drum roll. I clicked on the small penlight I had grabbed from the nightstand drawer. The pelican case was where I had left it. I crawled over the insulation beams, ignoring the fiberglass biting into my knees. I popped the latches and threw open the lid. The money? The passport? The gun? I picked up the weapon. It was heavier than it looked in movies. Cold, matte black steel. I had never fired a gun in my life. I didn't know if the safety was on or if it was loaded. I turned it over in my hands, my heart pounding in my throat. I found a small switch on the side and clicked it. A red dot appeared. Red meant dead, right? I checked the magazine. It was full of brass bullets. I was about to close the case when I noticed something I had missed the first time. Beneath the stacks of cash, there was a thin black moleskin notebook. I pulled it out. Marcus, Julian, was meticulous. He documented everything. It wasn't a diary, it was a ledger. I flipped it open to the first page. Subject, Elena R., target analysis. My breath caught in my throat. I saw a photo of me, taken from a distance, walking into my old apartment 6 years ago, before I met him. Vulnerability assessment, high. Emotional reliance, estranged from father. Artistic temperament, financial literacy, low. I flipped the page. Strategy, the savior archetype. Create scenario for introduction. Gallery opening mishap. I remembered the night we met. A waiter had spilled a tray of champagne on me. Marcus had been there instantly with a handkerchief and a charming joke. He had paid for the dry cleaning. He had seemed like fate. It wasn't fate. It was a script. I flipped further. Asset acquisition, the gallery, used for laundering phase 1 capital. Asset acquisition, the house, shell company ownership, tax shelter. My entire marriage, every I love you, every anniversary gift, every moment of intimacy, it was all in operation. I wasn't his wife. I was his money mule. I was the clean face he used to hide his dirty money. And then the last entry, dated 2 days ago. Exit strategy, liquidation, accounts drained, asset Elena to be transported for leverage or insurance during extraction, then neutralized in transit. Neutralized. The word floated in front of my eyes, disconnecting me from the last shred of hesitation I had. He wasn't taking me to South America to start a new life. He was taking me as a human shield, and once he was safe, he was going to kill me and dump my body in the ocean. I shoved the notebook into my waistband. A cold, hard rage replaced the fear. It was a clarity I had never felt before. The man downstairs wasn't my husband. He was a monster who had stolen 5 years of my life and was planning to take the rest of it tonight. I climbed back down from the attic, landing softly on the carpet. I didn't put the furniture back. I didn't hide the shears. I walked to the bedroom door. He had the key. He expected to come back to a bound, terrified woman. He expected a victim. I stood to the side of the doorframe, flattened against the wall, the gun held in both hands, pointing at the center of the doorway. I waited. 10 minutes passed. The silence of the house was heavy, suffocating. Then the footsteps. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy, confident steps coming up the stairs. He was humming again, that same piece of Chopin. He reached the landing. The humming stopped. I heard the jingle of keys. Elena? His voice came through the wood, muffled but distinct. I hope you've calmed down, darling. The server is clean. We're ready to go. The key slid into the lock. The tumblers clicked. The knob turned. The door swung open, slicing a wedge of hallway light into the dark room. Honey? He said, stepping into the threshold, a travel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked at the bed. He saw the empty space where I should have been. He saw the cut zip ties on the floor. His reaction was instant. He dropped the bag and reached for his waistband, his face contorting from charm to fury in a split second. "Drop it!" I screamed, stepping out from the shadows. He froze. He looked at me, then at the gun in my shaking hands. He saw the muzzle flare as I tightened my grip. Slowly, very slowly, he raised his hands. "Elena," he said, his voice dropping to that soothing, manipulative register. "Baby, put the gun down. It's not a toy. You're going to hurt yourself." I read the notebook, Julian. I spat the name at him. His eyes narrowed. The mask fell completely. There was no more husband left in his face, just a cold, calculating stranger assessing a threat. "You read the notebook?" he repeated, nodding slowly. "Okay, so you know. That makes this simpler." "Simpler?" I stepped closer, the gun unwavering. "You were going to kill me. I was going to give you a quick, painless death, which is more than you deserve now. You have no idea whose money I took, Elena. You have no idea what's coming for us. If you shoot me, you're dead. I'm the only one who knows the extraction route. I'd rather be dead than go anywhere with you," I said. He took a step forward. "No, you wouldn't. You're a coward, Elena. You've always been weak. That's why I picked you. You need someone to tell you what to do. So put the gun down, and maybe I won't break your legs before we leave." He took another step. He was 10 feet away. He looked relaxed, confident. He thought I wouldn't shoot. He thought 5 years of psychological conditioning would stop my finger from pulling the trigger. "Don't take another step," I warned. "Or what?" he sneered. "You can't even kill a spider, Elle. You think you can kill the man you love?" He lunged. It wasn't a hesitant move. It was a blur of motion. He closed the distance in a second, his hand reaching for the barrel of the gun. I didn't think. I didn't weigh the moral consequences. I just reacted. The explosion of noise in the small bedroom was deafening, a physical blow that shattered the silence of the house. The gun kicked violently in my hand, the recoil jarring my shoulder, but I didn't drop it. Marcus, Julian, didn't reach me. The bullet caught him high in the right shoulder, spinning him around with the force of the impact. He stumbled backward, his legs tangling in the rug, and crashed heavily against the wall before sliding to the floor. His hand, the hand that had held my life in a vice grip for 5 years, clutched the wound, blood instantly dark and slick against his cashmere sweater. He looked up at me. There was no pain in his eyes yet, just a profound, paralyzed shock. He stared at me as if the furniture had suddenly come to life and attacked him. "You shot me," he gasped, the word bubbling up with a cough. "Stay down," I screamed, my voice cracking, tears streaming down my face. I kept the gun leveled at his chest, my arms shaking uncontrollably. "Don't you move." He slumped against the baseboard, his face draining of color. The arrogant, calculating predator was gone. In his place was just a wounded man, small and pathetic. "Elena," he wheezed, applying pressure to his shoulder. "You stupid, do you know what you've done? The noise, the police." "I hope they come," I sobbed. "I hope they hear it." "The people I work for," he gritted his teeth, pain finally washing over him. "They don't leave witnesses. I was your ticket out. Now we're both dead." "No," I said, a cold clarity settling over me like a blanket. "Only you are dead, Julian. I'm the victim, remember? I'm the unstable wife you were trying to kidnap." I didn't let him talk. I didn't let him spin another web. I kicked the travel bag away from him. Then, keeping the gun trained on his head, I nudged the bundle of zip ties toward him with my foot, the same ties he had planned to use on me. "Put your hands together," I commanded. He laughed, a wet, jagged sound. "You can't be serious." I lowered the aim of the gun from his chest to his kneecap. "You said you'd break my legs, remember? Don't make me finish the job." He saw the look in my eyes. It wasn't the look of Elena the artist. It was the look of a woman who had nothing left to lose. Slowly, agonizingly, he moved his good hand to meet his bloodied one. I knelt behind him, pressing the barrel of the gun into the base of his skull, and I zipped his wrists together. I pulled the plastic tie so tight it bit into his skin. Then I did his ankles. I left him trussed up on the floor of the bedroom he had bought with stolen money. I ran to the attic crawlspace and grabbed the Pelican case. Inside, tucked in a side pocket I hadn't checked before, was a burner phone. I dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? My name is Alina Sterling, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I am at 4400 Skyline Drive. My husband is a fugitive named Julian Vane. He is armed, and I have shot him in self-defense. Send everyone. The next hour was a blur of flashing lights and chaotic noise. The police arrived in force. They didn't just send a patrol car, they sent a SWAT team. Apparently, the name Julian Vane flagged a massive alert in the federal database. They breached the door, swarming the house with rifles and tactical gear. I was led out of the house in a blanket, shivering in the cold night air, watching as paramedics loaded Marcus onto a stretcher. He was conscious. As they wheeled him past me, he turned his head. He didn't look angry. He looked confused. He looked at me like a math problem he couldn't solve. I analyzed you, he whispered as he passed. You were weak. I didn't say anything. I just watched the ambulance doors close, sealing him away from my life forever. The aftermath was a media firestorm. It turned out Marcus Sterling was indeed Julian Vane, a high-level architect for a cartel money laundering operation who had embezzled $10 million from his employers and tried to disappear. The merger he was working on was his exit strategy. The war room days were him moving assets into crypto wallets. And me? I was exactly what the notebook said, the perfect cover, the frantic, artistic wife who distracted everyone from his cold precision. 2 days later, I sat in an interview room with a federal agent. He had the black moleskin notebook on the table between us. We've gone through his logs, Mrs. Sterling, the agent said gently. It's disturbing. He profiled you for 6 months before he even met you. He choreographed the meeting, the courtship, everything. He chose you specifically because his analysis said you were... He hesitated, looking at the page. Dependent, I finished for him. Suggestible, lacking survival instincts. The agent nodded uncomfortably. He wrote that you would never fight back, that you would paralysis under pressure. He was convinced that in a life-or-death scenario, you would fold. I reached out and touched the notebook. I turned to the page with my photo, the one taken without my knowledge 6 years ago. I looked at the young woman in the picture. She looked scared. She looked lost. But she wasn't me anymore. He was a narcissist, I said softly. He looked at me like a mirror for his own ego. He thought my kindness was weakness. He thought my anxiety was cowardice. I closed the notebook. He forgot that when you back a frightened animal into a corner, it doesn't just cower, it bites. I looked the agent in the eye. The divorce was processed while he was in federal custody awaiting trial. The assets were seized. The house, the cars, the accounts. I lost everything material. I walked away with nothing but the clothes on my back and my name. But as I walked out of the federal building into the bright, crisp autumn sunlight, I felt lighter than I had in 5 years. I had rent to pay. I had a gallery to rebuild from scratch. I had trauma to process. But I was alive. I stopped at a trash can on the corner. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a copy photo of the page from his notebook, the one titled Vulnerability Assessment. I looked at the line, Subject is incapable of autonomy. I took out a lighter, flicked the flame, and held it to the corner of the paper. I watched the fire curl the edges, turning his arrogant analysis into ash. You were wrong about everything, Marcus, I whispered as I dropped the burning paper into the trash. But I was right about the scratching in the attic.